So I'm working on porch posts, the corner posts, to support the hips for the wrapping porch. So I obviously took this opportunity to buy a new toy, and it is basically a laser that will shoot a point from the floor to a corresponding point on a ceiling or roof. It will shoot it up. It also shoots one horizontal and vertical, but it really came in handy for this because it's really difficult to find anything straight enough to put a level on it and enable you to, take a point at the bottom, level it straight up to the top. So this came in handy for that. So at the top, it'll come into focus. So at the top, I put the corresponding, I kind of colored it in with marker so it's a little bit more obvious to see, but I put the center point and then I pulled lines across to that, and you can see the kind of where the post will land. But I want the post to distribute the load to those other purlins that come into the track. So I'll show you how I'm going to do that. So I fastened a 8x8 square of this that will receive the top of our porch post. But as you can see, there's a gap right here. So I measure this gap and I cut a wedge, and I'll drive a wedge into here, and that'll transfer this load to the top here. So that'll help us distribute our porch to these purlins here, the continuous track here, and this purlin here. So it makes one single surface for the top of the porch post to support. So that takes care of our any of our down forces. So for our uplift, basically, I'll have to come back in and make straps that go from up in here and strap the roof and carry that strap down either through a series of straps or angles. I'll have to carry that down to the post that's going to be here. And so we have to anchor both. We have to anchor for any down forces, basically the weight of this roof right now, and then eventually uplift when we decide to get a hurricane. So that's how I'm creating a flat surface and also distributing the load of the post to all of my steel framing members, and how I took care of the gap here because there's a slope here. So there's a slope coming up for this hip. So I'll cut that wedge and I'll put that in now, and we'll get working on our post base. So we'll have to mount a post base down there with an anchor in it, so that will bolt it down to our concrete. So let's get working on that. So we ground off our bolt head. The reason for that is there's a square plate that goes on it, and as you pull that bolt and torque this down, it's going to push the top up, and as it pushes the top up, this piece will sit a little bit proud on that. So we ground off the top of that bolt, so this sits nice and flush. So now our porch post base sits down nice and square. So now it's just time to cut our porch post. So the way that I did these, though, it comes with this washer. I recommend you use this washer. It's a thick washer, but the hole's a little bit big, so I put the other washer that comes with the anchor bolt. So I'm using a 1/2-inch anchor bolt going down into I'm trying to make sure I keep this porch post. I measured in 2 inches here and 2 inches here, and the reason for that is I know what my thickened edge is. I believe it's an 8-inch thickened edge, so this makes sure that our anchor bolt stays within that thickened edge out here. You don't want to bring these in too far and get in where it's only a 4-inch slab or something like that. So keeping it out here, make sure that we can get a maximum embed into the concrete, and you torque these down. There's usually a torque, I forget what it is, but there's usually a torque on the package. For the most part, you can tell when you start to deflect it, it's about as tight as it gets. You'll start kind of pulling that down, and that gives you your PSI for the pull out and everything. So it's time to now we can put our plate in and get a measurement from the top of this plate all the way up to our attached we can get a measurement to our attached plate. So we've installed our wedge, and the way that I like to do this is to make sure that we actually make this plate be level. And so we cut our wedge. You're able to calculate the pitch of a hip using your speed square. So your speed square will generally have numbers. Some of the numbers are for your commons, and then you'll see the top says hip valley. And those are usually pretty close, depending on how accurate your framing is. So you can cut a good wedge with the right slope on it. So we cut our wedge out of a scrap piece of 4x4, and so drove that wedge in. Drove the wedge in until we got this pretty much level. It's within a fuzz. And so then I drove some long screws. You can see them coming up through the wedge all the way up into our piece of track. So I drove those screws all the way through to secure everything together. So now our top plate up here is ready for our porch post. So I leveled the porch. I tried to figure out where the eave would be level by using a stick with my laser reader on it. And we would put the stick to the underside of that and put our laser there. And then we set up our laser here. That way we can carry that height and level that all the way out to the corner. So the way I make sure that it's right is I average. So I check one here, I check one there, and I check one back there. And what these are the overhangs that bolt to our columns. So when our columns are level, these pretty much come out level. And then we take the stick, we measure those heights, and we carry that dimension all the way out to the corner. So now we have our post installed, and it is plumb to the bottom and rests on our top cap, our plate. So what we'll end up having to do next is come in and put straps to take care of, as I mentioned, take care of the uplift now. So our downforce is pretty much taken care of. We put our anchor bolt on the bottom, we put our plate there. I obviously have to switch out the screws that I used on the bottom, but everything is now supported. And so now I feel a lot better about walking around out there. Got that corner done, and I've actually already finished the corner down there as well. So got two corners. These two here also need them because they are these two that support. Most of the other ones are going into a 6x6 steel column, but those right there go into a webbed column. So because of that, that webbed column is continuous all the way up. So the webbed column isn't the same as the 6x6 steel columns that you'll see everywhere else. So those, obviously because of deflection and uplift and everything, the corresponding, we get a post around each one of these.